There are over 550 million firearms in worldwide circulation. That's one firearm for every 12 people on the planet. The only question is, how do we arm the other 11?
Step number 1. Open up a bank or manufacture war materials like weapons, raw materials, soldiers, or services. Step number 2. Don't just pray for war, lobby for war. Push your politician friends for more conflict. Step number 3. Support both sides of the war so that you come out on top no matter who wins. Step number 4. Sit back, relax, and bask in all that sweet cash flow as innocent men, women, and children perish. War is a racket. It always has been. It's possibly the oldest, easily the most profitable, and surely the most vicious. It is the only one international in scope. It is the only one in which the profits are reckoned in dollars and the losses in lives. There's something special about war. For people who live in first world countries, it may seem like a far-off concept that would never happen here, and yet over the past 3,400 years of human history, we've spent only 268 of them in peace. But the business of war goes much further back than that, with the first one ever recorded back in 2700 BCE in Mesopotamia. This makes the industry of war have a longer track record than the information industry, education, and banking combined, along with many others. War is the ultimate discipline of any government. War is to government what life and death is to humans. If nations can meet the challenge of war, they'll survive. If they can't, they'll perish. War can also be looked at as a racket, but unlike your small-time mafia gangster asking for his protection money or his VIG,
do you even know what VIG means?
It's the US Air Force dropping a bomb on your roof. In fact, this racket is so profitable that at least 21,000 new millionaires and billionaires were made in just the US alone during World War I. And that's in early 1900s money. And it's because of these life or death scenarios and these opportunities for massive profits that incentivizes governments to willingly forget about its laws, to forget about the prosperity of its citizens, the prosperity of its economy, to make sure that above all else, its military is well funded, well equipped, and well trained. That means if you can help governments in their primal act of survival to remain in power by offering raw materials, weapons, soldiers, services to soldiers, you're gonna be the government's best friend. And they'll be more than happy to not only pay for your products with money that they have, but they'll borrow more money and even create it out of thin air via their central banks to make sure that they live. And because a government's first concern is survival, they're not all that concerned about getting the best deal. That means you can easily overcharge for your products.
It was all a scam. Halliburton was charging $45 for a six pack can of like Coke or Pepsi. Halliburton charged the government $100 for every bag of clothes they washed.
And they will gladly pay the markups to make sure that your business and your salary are taken care of. How taken care of, you may ask? Normal business profit margins are around 10% give or take. But wartime profits? Whew. Especially with the big wars, we're talking 20%, 60%, 100%, 300%, 800%, the sky is the limit. Take DuPont for example during World War I. During the wartime years, their profits increased by over 950%. Or take the Central Leather Company at the same time. During the 3 years before the war, profits were around $3.5 million. Not too bad. In 1916 alone, $15 million. A very small increase of, I don't know, 1,300%? Or take even less war-oriented companies like the American Sugar Refining Company. They averaged $2 million a year before the war, and in 1916, $6 million. Now you may be thinking to yourself, but Jake, that was the Great War. Certainly war profits can't be that insane today without another world war, can it? And yeah, you're right, but they're still pretty damn juicy. During the Iraq War, often called the most privatized war in history, KBR, one of the main logistics supplier contractors for the US, we're talking like food, facilities, etc., got a whopping $39.5 billion in Iraq-related contracts, with Agility Logistics and the Kuwait Petroleum Corp falling behind in second with a measly $13.5 billion in contracts. Now those numbers are huge, but what does that mean for you if you were running one of these companies? Well, KBR's parent company, Halliburton CEO, was paid a nice $42.6 million in 2004. What about Titan and Khaki, the two companies that provided the US with interrogators that were part of the infamous Abu Ghraib prisoner torture case? Khaki CEO made a fairly decent $22.2 million in 2004. And Titan, he takes the crown with a $47.2 million income in both 2004 and 5. Revenue in the tens of billions, salaries in the tens of millions. I don't know about you guys, but I am 100% willing to help bomb some innocent villages for that kind of money. I'm definitely getting demonetized for this. But at the end of the day, it's not really the government that's paying you all these juicy profits. No. It's the citizens, it's the plebs like you and I that foot the bill.
Hollywood's most famous movie stars leave the film capital to help the government sell war bonds.
The Pentagon audit released last night that found the company is overcharging taxpayers.
It is your money that's being used.
Through taxes and through this thing called inflation, where the government doesn't want to anger us too much by raising taxes too high to pay for all this stuff, so they just print more money. That way they get the stuff that they want by taxing us in a sneakier fashion. So at this point, you've completed step 1. You have a company that can provide war materials to the government. So what's next in our journey to becoming a war profiteer? During World War II, automakers were known as the arsenal of democracy because they were able to transform their production lines to make airplanes, tanks, and trucks. A very patriotic act. Not so patriotic was when US troops invaded Europe to find that the enemy were also driving vehicles made by Ford and Opel, whose parent company was GM. The Washington Post reported that GM was an integral part of the German war effort. The Nazis could have invaded Poland without the Swiss banks. They could not have done it without GM. Ford and GM definitely weren't alone though. Chase Manhattan were especially sinister, with a representative in Paris helping the Nazis seize the assets of at least 100 Jewish people that the Nazis thought were really worth pursuing. Other banks committed similar acts as well. Or take the Gulf War for example, where it was found that businesses and governments in at least 26 different countries sold weapons to both sides during the Iran-Iraq War. Or even more recently, Halliburton had a subsidiary in the Cayman Islands that was selling around $40 million a year in oil field services to the Iranian government. What do all of these companies have in common? They have no loyalty to their home country, but it's not just these particular companies. If you look throughout history, funding and supplying the enemy is all in a day's work as a war profiteer. It's nothing personal. See, in the war industry, your customers are all the governments of the world. Those are the people that you're loyal to, not just one of them in your customer pool. Because if you limit yourself to just your home country, not only are you basing all of your revenue off of just that one nation, but you're leaving so much money on the table. So what if you're an American company and your bullets end up being used on US soldiers? Relax, they're replaceable. The military has recruitment on lockdown.
I point, you shoot.
You know what isn't replaceable though? This opportunity to make a literal and figurative killing. So no allegiance, no patriotism. If innocent lives are lost, oh well, it's not like you pulled the trigger, right? Alright, moving on to step number 3. Alright, now for the tricky part. You can't make those juicy wartime profits if there isn't a war. Now there's usually a conflict somewhere around the globe at any given time that you can profit from. But those profits are nothing compared to the kind of money you can make when big superpowers like the US go to war. But here's where we run into a problem. The general public usually never wants to go to war because they'll be the ones fighting it. So you gotta do something about that or else our whole scheme falls apart. If you've made it this far, you probably have a good amount of government contacts, maybe some political friends in powerful positions. Heck, maybe you even rose up in the military, so you have a ton of military friends too. So now is the time to lobby for war, push for more conflicts, max out your campaign contributions, get your friends in the media involved.
They might fight dirty. using weapons of mass destruction.
There are ties between Saddam Hussein and Al-Qaeda.
Anthrax, smallpox,
dirty bomb,
Iraq Al-Qaeda connection.
Both of them want to see Americans dead.
War now seems all but inevitable.
Short of a bullet to the back of his head or he leaves the country, war is inexorable.
War is inevitable, and it is approaching inexorably.
Is war with Iraq inevitable right now?
I think it's 95% inevitable.
You, at this point, right now, tonight, don't see any other option but war. Do you? I'm asking you, Ambassador.
I don't think there's a viable option for the administration at this point. We're way too far out front in this.
Send us over there, guys. Let's get on with it. Let's get it over with.
Because it may seem like you're spending a lot of money right now, but if you're successful, it will bring back billions more. And again, you gotta stop worrying. You're not gonna be the one fighting this war yourself. No, you're just gonna sell the shovels and rake in those hefty profits. So just stay calm and let's move on to step number 4. In the world of single-family real estate investing, the gold standard of loans is the 30-year fixed-rate mortgage right here in the US. That is usually the only type of loans long-term investors go for because of how great and stable it is. In the world of war profiteering, you can think of contracts with the US government as the equivalent to those juicy 30-year fixed-rate loans. It's the gold standard. And if you're really well connected and the war is really dire, then maybe you can even get these special contracts called cost plus percentage of cost. This is basically where the government promises to cover all your expenses for the contract, but that's pretty common and it's not the cool part. The cool part is that after they cover your expenses, they'll pay you a percentage of your expenses as profit to you, normally in the neighborhood of 2 to 7%.
A cost plus arrangement that critics say leaves little incentive to save. The more taxpayer dollars Halliburton spends, the more Halliburton makes.
Cost plus encourages you to run up the cost of a program because you are going to get a percentage of the end result. And so there's no incentive to stay at Motel 6. Stay at the Ritz-Carlton in Qatar, folks.
Think about that for a second. If a project took you, I don't know, let's say $1 billion to do efficiently, and your contract promised you 5%, you'd only make a measly $50 million. I mean, that's not even enough for a private jet. Come on, we can do better. But let's say you overpay for supplies here, overcharge there, and drive up the cost to, let's say, I don't know, $4 billion? Boom! You just upped your profit for the same contract doing work more inefficiently to $200 million. Which brings us to step number 5. Let's say you've got a company, you've won some gold standard contracts with the US government, and the revenue starts pouring in. Now what? Well, you've already got Uncle Sam in your door paying your bills. And since you're a savvy businessman and you know that acquiring new customers versus reselling to current ones costs anywhere from 5 to 25 times more money, why not just do whatever it takes to keep daddy happy? Because if daddy is happy, you'll probably get more contracts. This means that it is your duty to make sure that at all costs, these contracts get fulfilled. Even if you don't have the manpower or infrastructure to support it, it doesn't have to be fulfilled well, it just has to be fulfilled. Fuel tankers need to get delivered to a military outpost, but you need to cross an active war zone? Send the civilian contractors in without telling them. If they happen to get attacked and a few of them were killed? Ah well, replace them with some fresh meat, work your political and PR magic, and business will continue as usual.
It's about contracts, I believe. Fulfilling a contract and replacing us if we died.
The government needs translators and linguists to relay mission-critical intel to soldiers. If they can speak broken English and are at least illiterate, they're hired. You're gonna get paid either way.
There was people who maybe spoke the language, but it was broken, but could not read it or write it. And I'm talking about English. And they were hired. They were never given a test. Nobody was given a test. I was never given a test.
Have a contract to provide clean water to the troops? Of course provide water, but forget about the clean part. We don't want to work too hard, right?
One of Halliburton's employees saw something wiggling in the water in his toilet bowl, so I went and tested the water in our water storage tanks. There was no chlorine in them, none. The water we showered in every single day was extremely contaminated. And when I talk about contaminated water, I'm saying malaria, typhus, Giardia, Cryptosporidium. I mean, the list is really, really long.
And it gets even better if you're on a cost-plus contract where you get paid for how much you spend. Why stay at a plebeian Motel 6 when you and your executives can stay at a luxury resort? When that truck you ordered doesn't have an oil filter, run it till the engine blows, burn it, and buy a new one.
They got the wrong equipment, ordered the wrong stuff, computers still in boxes, new vehicles. They'd push them out in what they called burn pits. And they just set it on fire, claim it as a loss, get more money for the right equipment or the right stuff they needed.
Oh, you don't have an extra spare tire for that flat? You know what to do. Blow it up. Congratulations, because in just 5 simple steps, you've successfully risen to the elite club of war profiteers. Now it's time to sit back and
watch your profits soar high as a crow! Oh, sorry. Wait, I thought we said profits gonna...
Okay, this is getting a little ridiculous. Are all war profiteers this unethical? I would hope not. Are there cases where government contracts were actually really helpful to the US government and the military? Probably, I really hope so. But probably like you, before I started researching this stuff, I didn't really know that it went on. So the purpose of this video is just to show you a glimpse of what can happen if you choose to become a war profiteer. And like the video on the business of banking I did, we've barely scratched the surface of the business of war. And I say this a lot, but if you want to see more videos on this topic, please let me know in the comments below and I'll definitely make more. Because if you're new to this channel, I do read every single comment and try to reply to all of them as well. So just let me know.